Margaret Hayes was a respected shopkeeper in a quiet Lancashire neighbourhood where she had lived for many years. She and her husband, Charles, had built a comfortable life by opening a small grocery store, which became a meeting place for the residents of the area. Margaret was very proud of her store, because in addition to ensuring the family's livelihood, the business also allowed her to create bonds of friendship with customers, who often became more than simple buyers. However, over the past few months, things have started to change. The region's economy went into crisis, and customers who used to frequent the store daily started to appear less and less. Margaret, ever generous, tried to help those most in need by offering them credit and allowing them to pay for groceries when they could. But despite their efforts, the situation continued to worsen, and the once bustling grocery store was now struggling to survive. On a Wednesday afternoon, while arranging the shelves, Margaret noticed something strange. A small, shrunken figure stood in a corner of the store, trying to go unnoticed. It was a girl, apparently about 5 years old, who had hidden a packet of bread under her blouse. Margaret frowned, puzzled. She had never seen that child before, and as she watched it more closely, she realized that the girl was alone. That scene was repeated in the following days. The girl would return to the grocery store, always trying to get some food without being noticed. The third time, she even brought a bag to carry more food. Margaret, however, did not confront her immediately. She watched from afar, intrigued by the situation. The girl appeared to be well-dressed, which indicated that she did not come from a family in dire need. Margaret decided she needed to do something. One morning, he approached the girl with a soft smile, trying not to scare her. "Hello, dear. I noticed that you came here a few times. I'm glad you like our food. What's your name?" The child's reaction was unexpected. The girl blushed deeply and, embarrassed, asked if she was allowed to take the food. Margaret, with a gentle smile, replied, "Of course I do, dear." With this permission, the girl filled the bag with more food. Worried, Margaret tried to talk to the girl further, asking where her parents were and if she needed help. The girl, however, seemed to want to avoid the conversation. When the bag was full, she quickly thanked her and hurried away, following the same path as always. Margaret decided she needed to investigate further what was happening. The next morning, when the girl returned, Margaret was prepared. He asked one of his employees to take care of the store and followed the girl from a distance, without her noticing. The girl walked down a dirt road, which eventually led to a gloomy alley. Margaret, cautiously, parked the car and continued to follow the girl on foot, keeping a safe distance. As the girl advanced, the path became darker and narrower, and Margaret felt a growing sense of unease. The girl finally entered a deserted and unkempt street, until she reached a small and worn house. Margaret watched from afar as the girl entered the place. The door opened, and Margaret could see a boy, who seemed to be younger than the girl, and a small dog by her side. Suddenly, the girl realized that she was being followed and closed the door quickly, leaving Margaret outside. The merchant stood there, paralyzed for a moment, before deciding to approach the door and knock lightly. "I just want to help," she said, her voice soft and understanding. After a few moments, the door opened, revealing the girl, who begged Margaret not to call the police. Margaret, with a reassuring smile, promised that she would not do that. After a moment's hesitation, the girl finally let Margaret in. The interior of the house was simple, almost devoid of furniture, and a musty smell permeated the air. In a dark corner, Margaret spotted the boy and the dog, both huddled and clearly frightened. The girl, with tears in her eyes, finally revealed the situation. "Please don't take us away. I'm Harry's older sister, and this is our puppy, Jack. My mom told me to take care of them." She introduced herself as Lily, and Margaret felt her heart sink at the sight of the precarious state in which these children lived. Margaret, now more worried than ever, asked Lily why they were living in such a remote place. Instead of answering, Lily began to walk toward another room, and Margaret followed her, intuiting that the answer would come soon. When they entered the room, Margaret saw a scene she would never forget. Lying on a simple bed was a woman, evidently very frail and weak. His eyes opened slowly, and when he saw Margaret, he smiled faintly. The woman, who Margaret soon discovered to be the children's mother, asked Lily to go play outside with Harry and Jack. Despite the difficult situation, the girl obeyed promptly. Margaret approached the bed, and the woman, in a soft, tired voice, began to speak. "I knew someone would show up. I asked for this in my prayers. We don't have a lot of time, so I'll be direct. I need you to do something for my children." She explained that there was an envelope with some money kept on the dresser next door. "It's not much, but it's enough for a few months' worth of food and a little comfort. Please use this money to take care of my children." Margaret, feeling the weight of responsibility, tried to convince the woman to go to the hospital, but the response was a soft but firm smile. "In my state, the hospital will only spend the little money I have. I prefer it to be used to satisfy my children's hunger." Margaret, with no alternatives, promised to do what the woman asked. With a serene look, the woman thanked him and asked Margaret to call Lily back. When the girl entered, tears were already rolling down her face, as if she knew what was coming. "Mommy, are you going to be okay?" asked Lily, even though she knew deep down that the answer wasn't so simple. The mother, with an affectionate smile, talked about the nights when they were stargazing together. "Even when the moon hid, we always looked for the stars. Soon, I'll be in that heaven. And I want you to look there every night, because even if things change, I'll always be looking out for you and Harry." Lily, crying, promised her mother that she would do it. Margaret, watching the scene with tears in her eyes, realized that she was witnessing something deep and painful. She called Charles, her husband, explaining that she would be out for the night and that she would tell him everything when she returned. Margaret spent the night in the house with the children, lying on an old sofa, almost sleepless. When the day dawned, the children's mother was no longer with them. Margaret knew she couldn't just leave the kids there. He took Lily, Harry, and the puppy Jack to the city. During the trip, as Lily and Harry, hugging each other in the back seat, stared out with teary eyes, Margaret couldn't help but remember her own pain. Months earlier, Margaret had experienced a devastating loss. She was in the kitchen, trying to drink a glass of water while crying non-stop. The glass fell from his trembling hands, shattering on the floor. Margaret had lost the baby she was carrying, and the pain was unbearable. Charles, her husband, comforted her, saying that they would overcome together, but Margaret believed that she would never have the courage to try again. Now, looking in the rearview mirror, Margaret felt a new calling. Perhaps fate was offering her a new opportunity, not only for her, but also for those children. When they got home, Charles was surprised and confused by Margaret's explanations. In addition to arranging for the burial of an unknown person, they now had 2 children and a dog in their living room. Charles initially thought the situation was crazy. "How can we take care of children who are not ours?" he asked. But when Margaret told him about the request of the children's mother, he also saw it as a sign, something that was beyond chance. When they opened the envelope left by Lily and Harry's mother, they found a few $100 bills, enough to sustain the children for only a few months. Over time, the affection between Charles, Margaret and the children grew. In just 45 days, Lily and Harry became an inseparable part of the family. Determined to formalize the situation, Charles and Margaret began the adoption process. The process was long and bureaucratic, but finally, Lily and Harry legally became their children, and Jack, the faithful puppy, the family mascot. At work, Charles's colleagues noticed how he seemed happier. The same was true of Margaret, who, despite the difficulties, had a renewed brilliance. One of his employees even commented that those children were a miracle, and that when one door closes, another always opens. Lily and Harry, now in a safe and loving environment, started school and adjusted to their new life. They never forgot their first mother, but they found comfort and security with Margaret and Charles. And every night, as she looked up at the starry sky, Lily remembered the promise she had made. Now, with her new family by her side, she knew she would never have to rummage through dumpsters to find food again.